Well, hello. Thank you all so much for having me. The first rule of being a principal is you never call an assembly right before lunch because kids never listen. I think the other rule of speaking is never speak right before dessert. So I will be as fast as possible so as to not keep you from dessert. I want to tell you two stories tonight about why I'm here and why I think that you're here. I want to tell you a story about what's possible, and I want to tell you a story about what's next. And the What's Possible story began in my third year as a principal, my first year at a new high school that I had just taken over. It was one of the lowest performing high schools in the state of Colorado, had been perennially failing, and we had a visionary superintendent who wanted to turn that high school around. And so we closed the comprehensive high school, and myself and a team of teachers got a chance to start one of these new small high schools in the same building. And so on the first day of school, we got there, and we had a whole group of new 9th graders and new 10th graders who never walked in the door before. And the very first thing we did when we walked in the morning is I took all of those kids outside in the back, and I put them all in a circle on the football field. And we said, what we know right now is if we look at the data from this neighborhood, if we look at history is any indication, what we should do is take half of this circle right now and send you home. Because what we know is the data tells us half of you will never graduate from high school. That has never, ever been true in as long as there have been records that more than half of you have graduated from high school. We could do that. We're here because we believe something dramatically different is possible. We're here because we believe that if you're willing to come in here and give this your best every day, we're going to say not only will you graduate from high school, you'll graduate from high school with admission to a 4-year college in your hand and with money in your pocket to pay for that degree. That is our commitment to you. And that's nice. That was actually not their response at all. Their response was, wow, Mr. Johnston, you're crazy. And that was their parents' response, and that was my superintendent's response as well. But so that we went about then the work of trying to do all of the incredible things, the small things and the big things to make that possible. And I'll tell you one part of that story, which is our kids came, when we got those sophomores then to senior year was our first graduating class, and we sat down with our team of teachers and said, we got to figure out what we're going to do to help our kids understand just how high the stakes are for them succeeding this year. So after a long couple hours of faculty meeting, we came up with a plan. And the plan was, here's what we would do. On the very first day of school, all of our seniors that walked in, we had a small panel about this size. And we had every single senior sign that panel, and it said commitment board. And the commitments were 2. I commit to graduate from high school, and I commit to getting accepted to a 4-year college. First day of the year, every single senior signs it, and we hang it on the door that walks into the senior wing of the school. So every time you class and you think, gosh, it'd be great to have a cigarette right now. Or maybe I should just go hang out in the park for the afternoon. You know right there hanging over your head is the commitment you made to say, I have a vow to get from here to the finish line. And then we started a process which we called the Climb to College, which was we built this big mountain, and we would have a community meeting with all of our seniors every week. And we had this mountain, and every kid had their own little 3x5 index card, which they put their name on, and they could decorate however they wanted. You know, favorite band, girlfriend's name, Broncos logo, whatever you want to do. It's your card. And we have on the wall this mountain, which we called the Climb to College. And all 44 of the cards start at the bottom. And then there are different base camps along the way. You got to find 3 colleges to apply to. You got to fill out a personal statement. You got to submit aid forms. You have to get accepted. You have to fill out your matriculation information. And every week the whole senior class comes back together, and every week we check in on where everybody is. And we'd read off what 12 students finished their personal statement this week. They'd all come in, take their name card, move it up to the next base camp. And now we as a team, every single week, could know exactly where every one of our 44 kids were. If we had kids stuck down at base camp 1, we knew somebody had to take them by the neck, sit them down, and make sure they got a personal statement written. And every week that structure continued until we got to the last stop of the mountain, which is admission to a 4-year college. And there we said we have to do something dramatic to make kids know how important this is. And so Senator Blumenthal will think that idea. But I went to my art teacher and said, could you find us the single most rickety ladder in this building? Could you find me a sort of health hazard walking tort of a ladder and bring it in to our community meeting? And they all come in, and we put the ladder at the end of the auditorium. And all of our seniors line up in two big lines down the auditorium that lead to that ladder. Sort of like, Broncos Sunday, when they march onto the field, you have big hooray lines on either side. And on this end, we put a chair. And whoever the student is who's gotten accepted to college that day stands up in the chair, and we say, "Where did you get into college?" And they say, "University of Colorado." Everybody says, "Woo-hoo!" And then I would say, "We know that you climbed this ladder on your own. But we also know that every single person in this room got dealt a rickety ladder. And you would not have climbed it but for the folks who helped hold that ladder while you climbed." So they would pick 4 what we called ladder leaders, which are the people who made their climb possible, who they get to pick to go down and hold one rickety leg of the ladder. And then they each get their own theme song. So then you get your ladder leaders down there. It's always a teacher. I got to hold some, I was really honored to do. Parents often, cousins, mentors. And then cue the theme song. DJ starts the music. Student jumps off the chair, runs down the aisle, hugs, high fives, jump on his back, climbs the ladder, signs the board. And every student, it's, okay, 1 down, 43 to go. 2 down, 42 to go. 10 down, 34 to go. Every week, watching the climb, making sure nobody gets left behind. May 10th, that year, never forget. Travis, 44th kid, stands on the chair, runs down the line, carrying 5 kids on his back, climbs the ladder, signs the board. Our school becomes the first public high school in Colorado where 100% of our kids are going to do a 4-year college. If I had more time and there wasn't dessert waiting, I would tell you the much longer list of failures that we had before and after, because it is not at all a silver bullet story. But I tell you that story because that is actually not the most important moment of that day. The most important moment of that day is every single time we do that ritual, I make our 7th grade teachers bring 1 homeroom of 7th grade kids and sit in that line with the seniors. Or 1 crew of 8th grade kids who sit in that line. So they watch every single time a kid jumps off, plays the theme song, runs down, signs the board. So when my 7th graders walk out of the room that day, what they're talking about right now is what college they're going to go to and what theme song they're going to pick. Right? If I could tell you how many arguments between 9th grade girls I litigated where it was, "You know what, Mr. Johnston, that's it. She is no longer my ladder leader." And I was like, "Well, I understand. This was a serious offense. But there are 4 years left. Let's just wait and see if she has a second chance." But the reason why I say that is because no one in our own school believed that that was possible when we told them that it was possible. And no one felt that it was possible until they actually watched the 44th kid walk down the aisle, climb the ladder, sign the board. But what changed their sense of what was possible was now every single one of those 7th and 8th and 9th graders no longer believes it's possible, they believe it's expected. And that, when you look at where we've come in the last 20 years of Teach for America, when I signed up to go teach in the Mississippi Delta, that had never been done. When I opened my school, it had already been done in schools all over the country because of people like Mike Feinberg or Dave Levin, who were TFA alums who started KIPP and have done that in not one school, but in 40, 60, 120 schools around the country. We were talking earlier today, 7 of the 8 highest performing schools in Denver are charter schools. 6 of those 8 are all led by principals who are Teach for America alums. That, for me, is the reminder of what's possible. But the last story I'll tell you is so what's next? So what is it incumbent upon us to do now? And this story is about a girl named Tasha, who was the first principalship I ever had. I was fresh out of Yale Law School and had no right to be a principal, and there was a school that couldn't find anyone else with a pulse, and so they took me. And It was a school that served all kids who were in state custody. So they either were in state custody because they were in the Department of Human Services, so they had been seriously physically or sexually abused by their parents and been removed from their homes, or they were in the custody of the Department of Youth Corrections. They had committed some serious crimes and were in detention centers for a long period of time, and now were in group homes around the city. 90+% of our kids diagnosed with emotional disabilities. We had everything from from serious gang-involved kids to 18-year-olds who themselves had already offended on 30 or 40 victims as sexual predators themselves. And so we had this relationship with the therapists and the houses where the students lived, where every day they would send us updates, so we knew what was happening, and we would try to send them updates. And there was one girl we were having an incredibly hard time with. We could not get her together. And so I called the psychiatrist who was the head of the center and said, I need some help with Tasha. I don't know what's happening, but we can't figure this out. And she said, come with me today and sit in my meeting with Tasha. With this, we're having a session. And she said, I'll only tell you one thing before this meeting, which is Tasha has a very big meeting tomorrow. It's a meeting with her mom. She has not seen her mom in 7 years. Tasha was 16 then. She hadn't seen her since she was 9. That in itself not so hard as the fact that the reason why she hadn't seen her mom since she was 9 was because when she was 9, social services took her out of her mom and dad's custody because her mom and dad had ritually sexually abused her from ages 2 until 9. They had been a part of this crazy cult in this part of town where they had a group of adults that they had shared Tasha with as this strange sexual object from age 2 to age 9. So the next day, Tasha is getting ready to walk into that meeting. And I'm sitting down with her and the psychiatrist beforehand. And not surprisingly, she cannot stand still. She's pacing back and forth all over the room. And the psychiatrist waits, doesn't say a thing. And then she says to Tasha, you know, Tasha, you will never have a healthy relationship with your parents. And Tasha goes ballistic. She starts throwing stuff, and how dare you? You don't know me, and you don't know my family, and you don't know where I came from, what I've been through, what gives you the right? And she yells for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then she stops, and she just collapses into a heap on the couch and just sobs. And the psychiatrist, her name is Hildegard, little short fat woman, pulls over right up to Tasha's face. And she says, but, if you make it through this meeting tomorrow, you will someday have a healthy relationship with your own family, your own husband, your own kids. And Tasha looks up. And she looks up, tears running down her face, and she says, you think I could have that? And Hildegard says, absolutely. And meeting end, Tasha leaves. I, in all of my 28-year-old wisdom, say, why did you do that? That was a terrible choice, Hildegard. Why would you ever tell her that she's not going to have a great relationship with her parents? You don't know what's going to happen. This might all work out. Tomorrow might go great. And Hildegard was a Holocaust survivor. She always called me Michael when she was really mad. She said, Michael? She grabbed me by the neck. She said, Michael, there are only 2 things that we can offer to children: truth and hope. She said, if you don't tell her the truth, she is going to spend her life looking for a world that doesn't exist. If you don't give her hope, she is never going to get out of the bed at all to think that life is worth searching for. And I walked out, sat down in my truck, and didn't move for about an hour. And thought, wow, that is what Teach for America was for me. Teach for America was my own lesson in truth and hope. Because when you've done this work, truth isn't actually written in history books. Right? It's not captured in facts and figures. It's actually drawn in faces. Right? I can close my eyes and see all of that truth. Truth for me is every Sunday around 2 p.m. when the phone rings in our house, and I pick it up from an unlisted number, and it says, this is a collect call from the Atlanta Correctional Facility. Will you accept the charges? And I say, yes. And the voice on the other end of the line says, is Mom there? And I say, hi, Jermaine. Jermaine's 24. Jermaine was in my wedding. Jermaine is serving life without parole for first-degree murder And my wife is the only mom that Jermaine has ever known. The truth for me about Jerome is we got there too late. Right? That's a truth I face again every single Sunday when the phone rings. But the hope is also when that phone rings from Flavio. Flavio was a student who came to our school at Mesa, was in a complete mess in 7th grade, in and out of detention, in and out of suspension, came to 9th grade, was about to get thrown out. We got him into a internship program in a medical center, decided he wanted to be a doctor, turned his life around, got to senior year, got accepted to college, and he came to me and said, Mr. Johnston, I got to tell you there's a problem. I'm undocumented, so I can't go to college in this state without paying out-of-state tuition. I've been applying for, I don't want to tell you this, but I've been applying for asylum for 8 years, but it hasn't come through yet. And I said, Flavio, you never told me that. What was the story? He said, I don't like to talk about it. He said, we lived in Chiapas, and my dad was one of the people in town who wasn't going to let the drug cartels run over him. And so they murdered him, and they murdered my uncle. And so in the middle of the night, my mom put me and my brother in a car and just drove until we got here. And he said, I'm telling you this, Mr. Johnston, because they just called me and said, I have a chance to apply for citizenship. I just have to go back to Chiapas and wait for it there. And I said, Flavio, there's no way you're doing that. There's no way we're sending you back to the place where they've been waiting to find you for 6 years. And he said, Mr. Johnston, when I make it, it'll be worth it. And he went back, and for 4 months, he slept in doorways with a gun under his belt, moving from house to house, keeping in touch by Facebook. It's the only way I can track him. Phones apparently don't work, that works fine. And waiting for his own visa application to outrun the drug cartels. And then about 2 months ago, he texted me, and he was home. And he said, we got to have lunch. And he had gotten his papers. He'd made it through. And he said, Mr. Johnston, I got to tell you something. And I said, what? And he said, I am so thankful for all that you did. And I have decided to join the military. He said, I'm going to go to college. He said, but first, I am going to serve the country that served me. And I'm going to give something back to all of the people who sacrificed for me so I can for once have their back the way that they had mine. He sends me photos from boot camp. He's doing great. We've talked about college options. But those are the moments of hope that remind us that all things are possible. And so the truth without hope is failure, right? But hope without truth is fantasy. And it is only through the both of those that you actually see what is possible. So someone said to me a couple days ago, why would you want to send some of the most talented and capable and committed young people into some of the toughest schools in America? All they're going to do is go there and be disappointed. All they're going to do is go there and be frustrated about what's happening and how broken it is. Not knowing that you're ill doesn't make you well. Right? Not knowing that you're ill doesn't make you well. And knowing that you're ill and not believing that there's a prescription only makes you hopeless. Right? The reason why these people have to do the work that they have to do, like you saw tonight, is because it is only in those moments where you're able to confront truth at its harshest and hope at its most powerful that then you believe that dramatic change is possible. It is those moments that when I got to the state legislature and we were running a bill to say, yes, we believe that ultimately you ought to be able to hire the best people and fire the best people and no one should be guaranteed a job for life if they're not performing. And when I would get stopped at the playground with my son on my shoulders and people would yell at me and my son would say, why are they mad at you, Daddy? I would remember Flavio. And I would remember Travis. And I would remember the moments when people said those things were not possible, and we proved that they were. Right? Because it was in those moments that you said, yes, the truth is we have a policy system in almost every state in this country that is deeply broken and that serves an old set of interests and a wrong set of values. That is the truth. But is that we know it is actually possible to make dramatic change in this sector the same way teachers and principals have made it across the country. The truth is that we need an army of people in every level of this work. It's teachers and principals and superintendents and state commissioners. The hope is when you look out in this room and you look out at the Teach for America Corps across the country, that army is actually coming. So the truth is America has not yet become the country we dreamed it to be. The hope is we are actually closer now at this moment than we've ever been. And so if we commit to the conviction of facing the hard truths, but never giving up on the hard-earned hope, then I think we place where America, with tears in her face, looks up at us and says, you think I could really have that? Because when I look out in this room, when I sat at the Teach for America 20th Anniversary Summit last year, 11,000 people strong, I felt sitting in that room the way that it must have felt to sit in Lincoln's cabinet, or the way it must have felt to sit in Dr. King's living room in 1955. To be around a group of people so committed to testifying to stories of truth and hope. A group of people who so committed through sheer force of will to the idea that you could radically change what this country was capable of. A group of people who at the end would hoist America onto its shoulders and carry it across the water to a place where we, like Tasha, could say, yes, we can really have that. Thank you so much for having me.